Okay, hello T-Birds, thanks for coming. My name is Stephanie Willard. I'm a MAGM student for those of you who don't know me. Some of you might be wondering how this session came about. So it actually started a year and a half ago, and in fall of 2016, T-Bird alum Julie Goodman gave an Introduction to Offsets course, and I left intrigued. So I contacted her and I said, how can I learn more about this? She said, well, next year there's a conference you might think about attending. So I put it on my calendar for a year ahead. And then the conference came and I was able to intern at the conference. Well, when I attended the Global Offset and Countertrade Association conference, I was impressed by the internationalism there. I observed offset professionals speaking multiple languages, engaging in cross-cultural negotiations, and doing really cool projects. And Julie was right. This was a T-Bird profession. And so we started to talk, how could we get a panel to come and to Thunderbird? And so we have our panelists, they've agreed to come, and it's all come together a year and a half later, which is amazing. So just to give a little background on our guest here today, Andrew Risley is a T-Bird alum, and he's currently with BAE Systems, and his position right now is Director of Industrial Participation and Offset in the Weapons System Business Unit in Arlington, Virginia. And prior to joining BAE Systems, Andrew was Offset Manager for Raytheon, and he has been responsible for orchestrating offset agreements in over 10 countries for multiple programs totaling nearly $1 billion. Before entering the offset field, Andrew was a senior marketing consultant with Cox Communications. He earned his bachelor's in marketing communications from Brigham Young University, holds an MBA from Thunderbird, and is Six Sigma certified. Jesse Torres is our guest from Bell Helicopter, Fort Worth, Texas, and in this role, he's responsible for developing and implementing offset programs in South America and Africa for both military and commercial programs. Jesse has over 11 years in the industry and has managed offset projects in more than 10 countries. He joined Bell in 2015 from Lockheed Martin Missiles and was also working in the offset industry with Lockheed. Jesse has earned a bachelor's degree in international economics and business from University of North Texas with a minor in Spanish. He's also studied abroad at the National University of Costa Rica and holds a Master's of Science in Systems Engineering at Southern Methodist University. Jesse is an alumnus for both Inroads Business Organization and the Hispanic Business Student Association, in addition to a member of the Global Offset Countertrade Association. Our third panelist today is Michael Rothermel. He is Managing Director of Roth Global Consultants for Global Offset and Countertrade Worldwide Strategy and Operations. Michael brings more than 30 years of experience in this industry. Prior to forming his own consulting company, he spent 10 years at Cisco Systems as head of Global Offset and Countertrade. Before Cisco, he served as director and executive member of the senior leadership team for Smiths Aerospace. Other management and offset roles include senior positions at Allied Signal, Gateway, and Northrop Aircraft. Michael has extensive international business experience in Asia, Europe, Latin America, Russia, Africa, and the Middle East. As a native of California, Michael holds a university degree from Pepperdine and Marymount, in addition to specialized degree in supply chain management from UCLA. Last is our moderator, Julie Goodman, and she's CEO of Goodman Global Consultants and she's been in the industry for 4 years. Primarily, she focuses on niche market called indirect offsets, where she sources projects in education, environment, and healthcare for major defense contractors. Julie's worked in 6 countries across 3 continents, and she holds a bachelor's in economics and international affairs from the University of Colorado and an MBA from Thunderbird. She's also actively involved with the T-Bird community, as some of you may know, and currently as well as in Dallas. And she currently serves on the board of directors at the World Affairs Council, Global Chamber Dallas, president of the Thunderbird DFW Alumni Chapter, and Thunderbird Executive Committee. She was nominated for the 2017 Good Works Under 40 Award, and most recently has been awarded Dallas Business Journal's 40 Under 40 for 2018. So with this said, I'm going to let Julie take it away. Thanks, guys.
I got microphone here. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you to all of our panelists for being here. I want to start out by asking each of you, you all do different work in the offset field. From a big picture perspective, how would you describe what you do? Andrew, do you want to start?
What I'm doing is I'm finding or seeking out what countries that are purchasing our products and services are interested in, and marrying that with my company's capabilities. So it's providing economic value into the country that's buying our various products from BAE Systems.
Jesse?
Okay. You know what? I think that's a very good description, matchmaker. I also think, you're basically an entrepreneur, and you have this budget, and offset is something pretty unique. You're trying to find projects that benefit the economy of these countries that are buying your system, whether it's an aircraft or rocket launcher, but they're spending a lot of millions of dollars of their taxpayers' money. So finding a project, something that matches as far as what they're looking for and priorities for their country. So when I say entrepreneur, you're really looking at a gambit of things, of technologies, depending on what that country needs. So, you have to be engaged, you have to be an explorer, and really trying to figure out what is the need. And, being an entrepreneur, you're taking risk and seeking opportunity as well.
Mike?
Well, is this working? I guess I can't hear myself. That's good. Yeah, I agree with the matchmaker analogy, and that is essentially what you're doing. You're trying to put together not only in the country that you're working in, but you're looking for opportunities within your own company, or in my case, within my clients, that might be able to be leveraged in order to make it a win-win situation. When you're going out into the country, you're doing country sensing, you're understanding what the regulations are, but more importantly, you're looking for what they need in the country and what they might give you a multiplier on, those kinds of things. But then if you can find that and match it with something that's going on within your own company, then you get a win you're not just fulfilling the obligation, you're actually making new business. And so I also like the analogy of entrepreneurial, because that's really what you are.
Could you all tell me what is most interesting about your work and what is the most challenging aspect?
The most interesting thing for me is, in this role, you have to be kind of a jack of all trades but master of nothing. I'm not a finance subject matter expert. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a supply chain expert. I'm not a contracts expert. I'm not a legal expert, but I have to know enough about each one of those functions to do my job effectively. So you get this wide breadth but not a lot of depth exposure, which I find fascinating because it gives you a really great network within the company that you're with, where you get to work with all of the subject matter experts in those fields, and then put together this economic package and propose that and negotiate it with the country that you have this offset requirement or obligation in. The most challenging thing for me is I've been in this industry about 5 years, and I came from telecom, where deals happen really quickly, and this is a very slow-moving train when you get on board. These deals can take sometimes a decade to see through its fruition. So it can be challenging and frustrating at times, but it makes the reward that much better when you actually see something really take root and your projects be implemented.
Well, I'll go just to change it up a little. But yeah, for me, what I really love about the job is, every contract and every situation and every country is different, and it demands creativity, to design a competitive solution, for the project. And like you said, large contracts take time to win. And so you may be working on something for, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And then by the time the contract's won, the solution that you had all put together, well, it's not really available anymore. So then you have to be creative and come up with something new. Now, I've had a little bit different experience in the commercial industry. I worked for Cisco for the last 10 years, and that's commercial. And, we had some military offset as well, but commercial offset is different. And when you have products that, I went from aerospace to high tech, and so I went from a product life cycle of 35 years to a product life cycle of 18 months. And so that redefines your concept of speed. But I think one of the challenges is, besides, the time that it takes and then having to be creative and jump through hoops at the last, the other thing is once sales lands the contract, they're out of there. And so it all dumps in your lap, and you've got to pick it up and run with it. So, and regulatory changes are common in countries, so you have to be on your feet, and when those things come, be ready to either hold your ground or renegotiate.
Jesse?
I guess before I start, I want to ask, who likes to travel? Just raise your hand. Okay, mostly
usual for
everybody.
Thunderbirds.
Right. I think you going to the school, I'm sure you have that thirst for it. One of the things that appealed to me about this job is the international engagement. You're traveling, and that is one of the things that appealed to me. But what I learned, as I started progressing in my career, the traveling part isn't always the most exciting part. Especially one of my first trips was to Bangalore, India, and I got what you call Delhi belly, and I got sick. You know what Delhi belly is? Yeah. So basically, you get sick, and I lost like about 6-7 pounds, and it was tough. But but the experience, I think, is the engagement with different people, connecting with different cultures. It's just amazing. The people that I've met, from workers operating on the line to CEOs to ministers, is amazing. The other aspect is the diversification. Some people have a job that you're focused on a certain technology, or you're focused on one set of customers. We really have a lot of customers, whether it's the Ministry of Defense or finance. It could be the customer that's actually purchasing whatever the aircraft is. So just the diversification and also in the technology. Sometimes the offset isn't just focused on what they're buying. Sometimes your offset projects is related to the aircraft they're purchasing, but it's really dependent on the economy, on their priorities and what that offset policy is. It could be in nanotechnology, it could be in healthcare. So that diversification, I love it, and it just keeps me going.
Yeah, I remember that Boeing had an offset contract that they relieved part of it by holding a rock concert, which I thought was really interesting.
That is pretty unique.
Yeah. You'll have to have Jay Campbell tell you about that one.
So very diverse as far as projects, as you can see. Mm-hmm.
It sounds like some of the highlights of the industry are getting to meet new people, getting to travel, getting to learn about different types of industries. Some of the more challenging issues, I think everybody talked about, that you have to have a lot of patience. So if efficiency is your thing, you got to learn to adjust. So next we're going to talk about something I know will be of interest to all of you, which is cross-cultural negotiations, a big part of doing offset work. So I know, Jesse, you're going to be talking about this tomorrow a little bit. So Mike, would you like to start with sharing a story about one of your strangest or most interesting cross-cultural negotiation experiences?
Sure. Yeah, I've got a lot of them, and it was hard to pick one for today. But I think one of the ones that now this is going back a long time. I did one of the first joint ventures in China for a company that is now Honeywell, Allied Signal. And I went over because I was the international guy, and but I had VPs and all kinds of senior execs with me, and we were going over and meeting with the joint venture partner that the Chinese government put us with. And so what I didn't understand at the time was the one guy that spoke English was going from each of us and asking, well, to Westerners, a very strange bunch of questions, about family and all kinds of things. And but what I didn't understand was there was the concept of guanxi, I believe it's called, and that's like a reciprocity thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's when two people meet before they do business, they try to connect with each other, either through names or through the military or school or somehow, because in what we're familiar with in the West isn't really a concept, social contract type thing. So what they were trying to do was make a connection. And so when he got to me, he asked about my family. Well, my father fought in World War II and lived in Tsingtao, where they make the beer. But he was with the American forces there. And so I mentioned that to him, and his eyes got really big, and he grabbed me. He says, "Mr. Rothermel, come with me." And so he took me over, and he introduced me to each one of the joint venture partner executives. This is Mr. Rothermel, whose father lived in Tsingtao and fought the Japanese. And so that was a big thing, and suddenly I was put in the position of leading the joint venture. So I was sat next to, their most senior guy, and the rest of my team is going, what are we, chopped liver, So anyway, that was very interesting, and so I had to pick up because I was the connection that allowed us to do business there.
Good story.
Yeah.
Andy, you have a story you'd like to share?
My story's not that good.
Share it.
Well, I'm gonna go with my first offset negotiation right out of Thunderbird. I was with a different company, and I was brand new to the company and brand new to the role, the function. And my manager said, "Okay, we're going to send you to go and negotiate this multi-million-dollar offset deal. Don't mess it up, because the company wouldn't have been able to get the main contract until the offset deal was in place. So everything was hinging on the offset agreement. So I go in country, and like I said, sometimes these agreements can take a while. It's not just a 1 day or even a 1 week or a 3 week process. It can take months. So I get there, and it's the middle of summer, and I won't say the country, but it was an Eastern Asian country. And I think purposefully they didn't have the climate control system on, and their tactic was they would rotate out the people on the other side of the table once they got cold enough. And I was there for the full day, freezing, and every hour or so they would get up and be replaced by somebody else, where we basically had to start all over again. So that was not a very successful negotiation. I went back actually no, so that was in the summer, and there was no air conditioning. It was really hot. I went back in the winter time, and the heater wasn't on. Same tactic, where they would just rotate out the person on the other side, at the other end of the table. So that was a good learning experience for me, because that was my first international negotiation experience. And it also helped me because that was a country that I had to go back to frequently over the course of the next couple of years. So I was able to call their bluff and suggest other locations to meet besides their office. We'd have it at a hotel conference room or my company's office in that same city. So it worked out okay, but it was a painful learning experience in the outset.
I've heard similar stories about this from other people, so it's very common in the offset world that they like to do these little tricks. So we still have a few minutes left. Jesse, if you have a story you'd like to share.
Yeah, one comes to mind is it was my first negotiation in the Middle East, and it was the offset group was actually all women, and it's in a Muslim country, so I came in, I did a little research on the cultural side of it, and it was interesting engaging with them and learning how to break the ice with them, which was very difficult. So basically, I sat down, I saw them, we entered the room, the door could not shut because I'm in a room with a female, so the door would remain open. I don't shake their hand until they shake my hand. Then I sit down, and one of the things I learned is they offer you tea or coffee, it's better to take it, and if you don't show them the bottom of your hand and make sure you're doing this. And so it was a bit tough trying to break the ice and negotiating this deal. And to be honest, the point at which I think things turned over is when I saw that we weren't getting a lot of progress, and I've made several trips in the country, and it just wasn't happening. One of the things I did was invite them to the city in the U.S. that was offering the technology, this health technology. And it wasn't really until I got them out of the office and they actually saw the facility and they met the board of directors of the school. And we sat down and they just started opening up, and they could really grasp the technology that was being offered, and it really just opened up. But I think one of the key things too was when I was suggesting hotels, I put them on the main avenue where there's a lot of shopping. And like I said, it was all women. So they were just, Jesse, thank you. This is such a great trip. When can we go back? And I was like, all right, I think we got a deal. I think they like this project. So, one of the things is, being observant and kind of understanding. And, seeing is believing. They're not there to see it. And getting them in front of it and seeing the technology and meeting the people and seeing that they're passionate as much as they are really helped.
Thank you all for those stories. Next, we're going to delve into some specific topic areas that the panelists wanted to discuss. So, Andy, we'll start with you. Could you talk a little bit about import-export trade and how Washington works in terms of doing offset?
Sure. So this was something that was completely foreign to me. So I'll take a step back. In this industry, you can't just go and sell whatever you want to whoever you want. We're a highly regulated industry. And whether it's you're working for a U.S. company and you're selling U.S. Services, you have U.S. regulation, or a U.K. company, U.K. regulated. So you can't just be like this rogue or renegade business development guy and making deals all over the world. There's congressional notification that needs to happen. There's licenses that you have to have in place. And each of these things takes time, and you need to know who the right stakeholders are within which branch of government. Is it the Department of State? Is it the Office of Defense Cooperation? Who within this massive gambit of the Washington system do you need to be leaning on for support? And that's something that anyone that's looking to get involved in offsets, I think, should have at least a good handle on it. because even just to have discussions, not even classified discussions, but just discussions about certain technologies, you need to have a marketing license. And these marketing licenses can take 3 months to 6 months to 9 months. It depends on, is Congress in session that day, or is, how frequently are they willing to review your request? That's something that, like Julie said earlier, requires some patience, but you also need to know how the system works and how to use the system to your benefit so that it is not the long pole in the tent holding the deals down or holding the deals back. And there's a lot of resources that are at various offset managers' disposal to use for that support, but I think you don't know what you don't know until you actually peel the onion back a little bit and see exactly what all the traps are that you have to navigate so that everything can fall into place and you can have an offset deal, you can have the defense article sale or the service sale to that particular country. So it's a tangled web, but I think it's good to at least have your eyes open throughout the entire process. And if you get into this industry, just soak it up, be a sponge, learn as much as you can, because it's a fascinating way to do business.
Thank you. I would also like to add to that I had a similar tricky situation when I was getting into the offset world with figuring out who the different foreign officials were to talk to in different countries. Sometimes it's the Minister of Defense making the decisions. Sometimes it's the Ministry of Finance. Sometimes there's specific offset people. So there's not one set rule on this is who you talk to in this country. So being able to navigate the offset world from the foreign government official side too is also an equally challenging experience and fun.
And every country's offset policy is different.
Yes.
A lot of times you'll have various leaders in some of these, the aerospace and defense companies, and offset's a small function. There's only, I don't know, if you had offset practitioners, US-based offset practitioners, there's maybe 200, 250, I'm guessing. That's their kind of day-to-day. There's a lot of folks that deal with it in the periphery, but so a lot of folks just aren't educated as to some of the complexities, and so they think, what you did in Turkey, that's got to work in the UAE. I mean, why can't you just cookie cutter approach? Do this project here, same project there, save a lot of money, save a lot of efficiencies, but
that would be nice.
What Turkey wants isn't necessarily what the Emiratis want, and so you have to really understand the policy and adapt accordingly, and then message that up to company leadership, like, it's a good idea, however.
Well, you can't move your supply chain into Chad?
Yeah. Then there's the U.S. government that has to approve it. Yeah.
So Mike, could you tell us a little bit about the historical offset in aerospace and defense versus the new specter of commercial offset?
Sure. Well, I'll take this one because I'm old. In fact, we were talking about an offset program when I was at Northrop Aircraft back in the 70s, where we sold F-5s to Canada and bought these corporate transport planes that we used as corporate transport to go from LA, where the plant was, to the finishing plant in Palmdale, and then up to Edwards Air Force Base and then back. And so they flew these things around. But they bought those aircraft and used them as corporate transports as an offset program. And I think that was in 1969 or something like that. So offset has been around, and in the aerospace and defense industry, it's been endemic for 50 years or more. Now, there's always been informal offset. And informal offset kind of is, we're willing to buy something, but, can you do something for us? But it wasn't in a formal contractual manner. And so, in a lot of cases, you did some things in those countries. You might move a supply chain in there if they had particular skill set or whatever, or some sort of advantage. But it's now becoming a lot more formal, because most of these countries that have commercial offset, they had aerospace and defense offset. And what they realized was they were spending as much on infrastructure, especially in the digital age, as they were on aerospace and defense. And they were saying, well, we get benefit from these offset programs. So what they did was they took those regulations that were in their defense procurement and put it into their commercial procurement, government procurement side. And so you've got that really kind of growing. South Africa has commercial offset. You've got Malaysia, you've got Turkey. Mexico's been talking about it for a couple of years. A lot of countries are understanding that they can now put that on the commercial side. Unfortunately, unless the commercial companies have somebody that was in aerospace and knows something about offset, they have no idea what they're doing. And that's what I found at Cisco when I went to work there. I ended up going to the CFO, and he gave me the offset role at Cisco because he had a horrible situation that developed, and I was able to get him out of it because I knew what offset was. And by the way, offset is not always called offset. It's sometimes called industrial participation, industrial collaboration,
Counter trade.
counter-trade.
Economic benefits.
My favorite term, though, is one of my French colleagues came up with this, and that was, it's economic diplomacy. I thought that was a great term.
Yeah, we got to be careful sometimes with the vocabulary that we use in different countries, because some of them don't like the word offset.
Yeah, that's true. I had two business cards. One of them said business ventures, and the other one said offsets. And some of them view it differently, and some of them see offset. They're like, oh, wait a minute. They may treat you a little different, or they may like you. They're like, oh, you're offset. You have to put business in our country, and they attach to you. And sometimes I don't want them to know I'm part of the offset group, and more of a business ventures or sourcing guy, just exploring the area. So that's definitely a good point.
Jesse, would you like to share some of your experience with successful offset projects? Maybe speak to some of your examples working with universities?
You know what? Yeah, one of my first projects was in Asia, and we were looking for a big project with a technology that could be spread easily. And the country in Asia, they were pretty advanced, so we had to get a good technology that was advanced enough that they would appreciate and we would get a good value for it. So we were looking around at different technologies, and we found a university that had this amazing welding technology. And it was micro welding, so it wasn't your basic type of aluminum welding. It was, you had to use a special machine, and it would basically correct any little micro cracks, so vibrations of a fan, and you have these turbine blades, and they have these minor cracks. Well, when we were looking around, we noticed that this country had a huge issue. They made so many blades for turbine blades, for engines and what have you, for aerospace. So we reached out to the university. They were interested, and actually the university is a very good candidate for something like this, because it's like a feather in their hat. If they can spread their technology, they're spreading their name. So they were intrigued, and they said, you know what, we'll help you explore and see how we can create an opportunity. So before we started investing a lot of money, we're like, you know what, we'll pay for you guys to go to this country, and let's start meeting with industry and see how we can move this technology around. Well, long story short, they said, you know what, this isn't just good for aerospace. We could actually use this for automotive. They're also really big into shipbuilding. And my eyes just got even bigger. I was like, you know what, this seems like a great technology we can use for this country. So one of the things about Offset, it's not all about technology. They like technology transfer, but how do you create jobs with that technology? Is it something truly unique? When people think, oh, it's just welding, they have that kind of welding, but they weren't using the proper equipment, and also the operators using that welding, they weren't certified. So the issues that they were experiencing is, since they weren't certified, they had to send it to Europe. So I made the case, if you have this technology, you don't have to send your parts to Europe. They have all these parts in the warehouse that they could actually start correcting these micro cracks. So that was just one project, and just very briefly, there was another project. It was an entrepreneurial project, and we were helping a country in Latin America. It was the Ministry of Defense, and they were coming up with these new technologies and new ideas, but they didn't know how to commercialize it. Well, this university that was their niche, commercializing new technology from the ground up. And we set up a program to teach them how to do it and to help commercialize those technologies, create prototypes, and send them to these customers and get some RFPs for it. So those are some examples just to think about. I know there's a lot of technologies here, maybe entrepreneurial programs that could actually be beneficial to some of these countries that really have a need for it.
So would you say there's future opportunities for universities to be involved in offset programs?
You know what? Through the years, it has really grown. And a lot of these conferences that are just offset based, I'm starting to see a lot of universities attend those. And it's quite interesting. And these universities are finding opportunities to basically partner with these prime contractors that have these huge obligations. And trust me, these universities, they want to be in the Middle East and they want to expand their name. And Offset is an opportunity to do that. And the countries love it too, because now they're training their employees with great education and training.
Thank you. Mike, I know you have a really interesting story about South Africa's offset project that you worked on. Would you like to share that with us?
Sure. This actually was the start where the CFO gave me the role. We had this offset agreement that Cisco had signed, and it was growing daily, and it had a 30% offset. And now, most companies would never do this, but Cisco has very high margins, very profitable company. They were putting 30% of every sale in cash into a reserve account. And the business development guys, of course, thought that was free money, and they wanted to build buildings in Johannesburg and put Cisco's name and all kinds of crazy things. So anyway, I picked up the project, and during the country sensing, I understood that like our channel partners there, they were hiring expats with networking skills. And so there weren't a lot of local people that had those types of skills. We found a recruiting company that we had worked with in the past, and they had this tremendous screening program where they would go into like the townships where the education wasn't necessarily that to the same standards, but the screening was for aptitude, intelligence, all of these things, and specific elements that lent themselves to being network engineers. And we had this program that was described as like a master's degree program on steroids, that took people up through CCNA, CCNP, that's network administrator, network professional, and then the CCIE got them through the writtens. And it was an expensive program, but I thought maybe we could get a high multiplier on it, and we did. We got a huge multiplier on it, especially after the first cohort that we sent through. But also, I got our channel partners who were hiring expats to hire the students while they came through the program and just pay them a stipend so they didn't starve. And this program was truly full-time. just class after class after class. But we train them not only in network administrator skills, but also in the soft skills, how to sell themselves, how to sell the product, how to, how to really be somebody on the outside dealing with customers. And so we brought them through, and the screening was so well done. They would screen 100 and something, and I'd get 12 people. And we'd put them with the channel partners and get them. And at the end, if they graduated with their certifications, they had an 18-month employment contract. So, and it was done so well that we had a 97% pass rate, believe it or not. And that's really difficult. Those tests are really, really tough to get those certifications. And those certifications are good throughout the world. And they're the standard, basically. But, and I got 49% women. So this was really a win. And so essentially, it was win-win-win all the way around, because I took students out of essentially abject poverty and put them into a middle-class job where they created 2 or 3 jobs around each of them. So great win for the students. For the channel partners, they were able to hire locally, pay local wages, good wages, but local wages instead of expat wages. And plus, they had students that really understood the culture. And for Cisco itself, we trained them on Cisco equipment. So when they got out in the field, what did they specify? Cisco equipment, right? And so we even proved that we increased sales by using this offset program. And believe it or not, over 6 years, we created over $100 million in offset credit. And so that was a very successful program, and it still goes on today.
Pretty amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know all of you might be thinking, how do I get started in this career? What are the first steps? What skill set would I need? I'm really glad that Andy was able to make it tonight, because I consider him a Thunderbird success story for the offset world. So Andy, we'll start with you. If Thunderbirds are interested in entering this field, what skills are necessary, and what paths could you take to pursue this career?
What skills are necessary? So there's hard skills and soft skills. I think you need to be kind of like a chameleon. You have to be able to adapt to lots of different cultures and negotiating styles and personalities, and that's key. If you aren't able to adapt to those types of environments, then it's going to be a challenge. But I mean, you're all Thunderbirds. I think you all pride yourselves in your ability to do that. That's what attracted you to the school. It's good to these deals you're talking about tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. So you need to have some good financial acumen. You want to make sure that, because these offset deals, they cost money. There's financial accountability to these projects that you are proposing and implementing and seeing through to completion. And ultimately, your role is to make sure that you don't go over budget. You want to try to plow some of that budget back into profit at the end of your program. Your boss loves that. And you want to make sure that everything is above board. So those are, I guess, some skills that I think any good offset manager should have. What was it? The other part was what path to take about pursuing that.
I was wondering if you could maybe share your story about how you got started your career in offset, maybe a little bit about what your interview process was like.
So mine was I wish it could all be this easy. I was applying for internships this summer between my first and second year at Thunderbird, and Raytheon came onto campus seeking the internship candidates for 2 different roles. Neither one had anything to do with offset. One was adjacent market strategy entry, right? Adjacent market entry strategy. If we're looking at moving into new areas of business that aren't necessarily within our core competency, what's the best way to do that so we don't lose our shirts? That was the project that I took over. So I went to Tucson, Arizona, and spent my summer there between my first and second year. And while I was there, I sat next to the business offset director, and I was curious about what he did, and was asking questions, and he kind of took me under his wing and gave me some tips of, well, yes, this kind of business practice is legal. It's been around since like the 60s, and here's what it is. Here's what offsets is. So I finished my internship, and I was very happy with the company. The company was happy with me. They said, Andrew, we want to bring you back after you graduate from Thunderbird. We don't really know what we're going to have you do. So just don't forget about us, and let's start the full-time role interview situation in Thanksgiving time frame. So you can start in May after you graduate. So I interviewed, and it was for a generic role. It wasn't for an offset manager role. It was more kind of a star type questions of, tell me about a time when you had to deal with a difficult employee or something like that. And fast forward to March, April timeframe, and the vice president that I ultimately reported to said, we want to hire you as our offset manager. And I said, oh yeah, I remember learning about offsets when I was in my internship. I thought that was interesting, but you want me to be your offset manager? Oh yeah, it'll be great. You're a Thunderbird. Offsets is, it's all international. You don't touch the domestic stuff. It's only international business, and you now have your newly minted Thunderbird MBA, so you're going to be fine. And then it was very much drinking from a fire hose, and like I said in my previous example, that within 2 days after starting, they had me working an offset proposal to go to a specific country. A month after that, I was sitting in that country negotiating this offset agreement. So it was flying by the seat of my pants, hoping I didn't do anything that would, the Department of Justice would come knocking on my door because I did something illegal, or reveal classified information or anything like that. But so it was kind of a non-traditional way to be hired into the role. But I was very fortunate, and I'm glad that the company took a chance on me, and I'm glad that this opportunity was available, because it's a fascinating industry, and it's a fascinating function within this industry that not a lot of people know about, but once they find out about it, it tends to hang on to people for a while, because every day is different, because every country is different, every sale is different, every policy is different. You're not punching your time card doing the same thing day in, day out. You really get to have some really fascinating experiences in this role.
That was a very good answer. Thank you. Mike, Jesse, do you all have anything else you'd like to add on to that as far as how to pursue a career path in the offset industry?
Sure. Throughout my career, I've always had a secondary responsibility in addition to offset. And, I started out in the supply chain world. And, of course, when somebody signs a offset deal, they said, well, we'll just move that supply chain into this country. And, of course, the supply chain, boy, you really don't want to do that. So, so eventually, they would put me, the international guy. I've always done international since, well, believe it or not, my first contract internationally was in 1977. But, so I've coming up through supply chain, they would say, well, what can you do in that country? Well, maybe something, maybe nothing. But I have moved supply chains into countries like F-18 sale to Finland, and we were buying a new communication system from AT&T. We got AT&T to go over, and they said, "Oh, hey, they've got the skills and they've got a better price." So they moved their supply. I got, I think, $4 million a year for years on that one. But so supply chain is one way. Another way is I worked in worldwide sales strategy, working with country leaderships and going in and doing country sensing, and then looking at those regulations and coming in, especially on the commercial side, with an offset proposal that maybe they weren't even thinking about. And so that helped to make those sales. Or maybe knowing that in that country, knowing the offset person in that country had some obligations that they were having a tough time filling. And so I would say, well, we're doing this sale. If you help us here, I'll help you there. And so being creative, you need to be very curious, and you need to understand what's going on in the country all the time, or in the company all the time, because there are many opportunities for leverage, especially in large companies. And so the more people you know in sales and engineering and all of these, and a lot of times it's just personal relationships that you develop, and you understand now that this project is going or that project is going, and being able to leverage those things and put them together and be the matchmaker. I called it the Yenta, but I think that's the matchmaker, the Jewish matchmaker, right? But anyway, so yeah, but you can come at it in a lot of different ways. I think one of the interesting ways that you might approach is to become a foreign commercials, foreign commercial
Officer.
Foreign
Yeah.
Service Officer?
Service officer, that's right. I knew the acronym, but that might be a way for you to work in different countries, supporting, your commercial sales, supporting businesses that are trying to make sales, and, understanding a little bit about offset could go a long way to helping those companies that come in there. And then maybe they'll hire you out of that government service job. And so that's a way to come in. I know, people in contracts, they see all these requirements coming through, and maybe they start to, study it a little bit more and develop, a rapport with maybe the offset person, and then so maybe they can become an offset person as well. So there are a lot of different paths that come in, but if you were to design one, I would say, starting off in supply chain is not a bad place to start.
Thank you. We're going to move on to questions and answers real soon, but before we do, I wanted to mention there is an upcoming offset conference that's going to be in Phoenix, and it's March 5th, 6th, and 7th. I heard that was maybe spring break time for some of you, but hopefully some will be in the area. And the conference has offered exclusive to Thunderbird students a 30% discount on any of their training sessions if you all are interested. Jesse has attended these conferences before, and I'd like for him to speak a little bit about what the conference is about and what you could get out of the training.
So the conference is DIOA, Defense Industry Offset Associations, DIOA. And it's actually going to be here in Phoenix, and it's a great conference, and the people that attend it are basically your prime contractors. Aerospace companies, defense companies actually have obligations, and they're the only ones that are invited. There's other offset conferences that you actually have the foreign country there, and you have representatives, you have offset brokers. This one's just for those aerospace companies, so we can talk internally about lessons learned, about the policy, and really get involved. And actually, it's a great venue to network and really understand what's going on, what's working with one country and what's working with another, and sometimes what's not working. So it's a great learning opportunity. They usually do about some course training. They'll do an offset 101, which is the basics on offset, and then they'll have a negotiations, and then they'll have an advance. I strongly recommend it. I think you can get yourself in touch with a lot of the people that actually have these offset opportunities and ask them questions and network. So.
Well, thank you. I'm going to pass around a sign-up sheet if anybody wants to put their name and email. I'm happy to follow up with you with more information if you're interested. Last thing before we get to the Q&A session, I just wanted to say thank you to all of the panelists. All three of you have been very instrumental in helping me develop my offset career, so thank you for being here. Also, huge kudos to Stephanie Willard for organizing this. You did an excellent job, and I really appreciate everything you did, and thank you to all of you for being here. And now we'd like to open it up to questions. Don't all raise your hand at once.
Is there a question?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Temi. I'm studying Global Affairs and Management, and I'm graduating in May. My question is actually to Michael. Is that your name, sir? Okay.
Yeah.
But, you guys could contribute as well. So you mentioned that there are instances where you experience regulatory issues when you go to some of these countries. How do you navigate through those issues? What do you do? What resources do you have at your disposal that you actually apply to those instances? Because I know such instances vary from countries to countries, from continent to continent, and I'm very sure that the style you apply to a particular country is obviously different from what you apply to other countries. So how do you navigate through those regulatory issues?
Well, I think, first off, each country does have offset regulations, and they all are different. They might have the same theme, but they are different in how they work. The issue comes when they go back and they review their regulations and they change the regulations, and now suddenly something that you were doing is no longer applicable to the offset, to be able to gain offset credit. And so you have to negotiate those changes. And like I said, either stand your ground and say, look, we have an agreement, we already said this, and we're not going to change it. Well, that can kind of put you in a bad position for the next round. Or you can look at it and say, okay, well, how do I change what I'm doing? How do I, pick up the pieces and move forward with it? So that's where the creativity comes in. But I'm not sure I'm answering your question. Oh, I am. Okay. All right. Yeah. So the regulations are published, and every country publishes them. I maintain a list of 52 different countries now that we have.
I think more.
There's probably more now, but anyway, I have a list of every single country and what those regulations are. There's actually a service that keeps you up to date on that. And but the program in South Africa was very successful. Things were going really, really good. And then we had a a regulation change. And they said, well, we can't do training anymore. And that's like, really? But luckily, it was a regulation for, what is it? NIPP, the National Industrial Participation. And we were able to move that training program over to another parastatal, to the utility company. So we were able to move the program over there because it still complied with their regulations, which were operating under a different regime, and besides, the CIO already knew, the great work that we were doing, and so we were able to qualify it under that program. But now we have to do something different over here. So we can no longer do the training program. So now we're looking at, actually, it's not me anymore because I'm not with Cisco, but I still maintain my contact with my team over there, and I know that they're working on something different for that.
Great,
program.
thanks. Anyone else? Questions? Yeah.
So for me, I'm really interested in this aspect of cross-cultural negotiations. And when you guys go to do your offset negotiations, is there any training, or do you just kind of learn by trial and error what works and what doesn't work as far as how you negotiate with these different cultures, different countries?
I'll take that one. So I know that my former company used to send some of its commercial and contract managers to Thunderbird for the training. It was like a certificate in global negotiations. And so really,
That was not a prompted question, by the way.
yeah. We didn't discuss this beforehand, but I remember I'd walk around the office at Raytheon, and I'd see the little certificates on people's, they'd be hanging in their office. I'm like, no way, you went to Thunderbird? And I look closer, and it's a certificate in global negotiations, and it was for this exact reason. How do you adapt and set yourself up for success when parachuting into country X and learning how to successfully negotiate a contract?
I had a similar story, actually. When I go to the offset conferences, I always look at who all the conference attendees are and then cross-search that with who are Thunderbird alums. And I see all these people, but it turns out like Northrop Grumman has a big certificate program that they used to do here. So I thought all these people went to Thunderbird, but they just did a executive education program here. But it was still great foot in the door because they all knew Thunderbird. They were willing to meet with me, willing to get me introduced to the right people at their organizations. So, yes.
I did have, when I was with Allied Signal, which is now Honeywell here in the Valley, they sent me, when I first started working in China, they sent me to a school in Boulder, Colorado. It was Prudential Cultural Relocation, which I thought was interesting, but it was a full week, and it went from like 7 in the morning till 11 at night because you did the banquets and everything. We had a team that were attending the university, either were professors, but they were from the PRC, and they came and they were the opposite. And we were using interpreters back then because hardly anybody in China spoke English at that time. But we were using interpreters, and we would get to a certain part. We had a fake negotiation. We were trying to do something, but it was all laid out for us. And at a certain points in the negotiation, they would stop, and then they would switch to English, and they would tell us what they were feeling. When you said this is what we interpreted as that, and So you really got to understand the culture. And, we learned Tai Chi, we learned, we did all kinds of
Can you
things.
show us some moves?
Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, that'll be later at the pub for anybody that's going to join us.
Yeah, that'll have to wait. But I think one of the most important things that every single one of you needs to take into your heart, and this is any of the people that work for me, that one of the very first things that I insist on is that they truly take in and believe that every culture is valid. I think that's something that a lot of people, they say, they have a lot of prejudice against different things. Now, when I say every culture is valid, people live under that culture. They're born, they live, they die, they go to school, whatever. But every culture is valid. And once you take that to your heart, you can step back and look at it objectively. And you might find something abhorrent in that culture, but if you're objective, you start to understand, okay, all right, they do that because of this. And that's similar to what we do, but we do it this way. But if you understand it, then that opens you up, and then you're able to start to deal on a human level with them. And I've worked in over 50 different countries in a lot of different cultures, and what I find is that we're a whole lot more alike than we are different. And so, but that's the main thing, is you just agree to yourself that every culture is valid, and that then gives you the ability to back off and have a perspective.
I think I'll add just something to that real quick. So again, the question about negotiating and learning that, I think everybody, especially in this school, the basics of negotiation. You learn those principles and fundamentals. But as far as negotiating culturally, I think the main thing, how I learned it was just on the job training. But the important thing and the reason why is because it's how you connect with the customer, going along with what you were saying, is how do you connect with them to build trust? Just because you have the most superior product doesn't mean you're going to win. It's whether they trust you or not. And that's the biggest thing I would say as far as a negotiation is winning their trust, listening to them. And the best way to do that is trying to put that puzzle piece together. I say puzzle piece. The solution, it's a puzzle. And if you're just handing it to them and they're just, okay, I guess I just accept it, right? But if you put the puzzle pieces out there and you have them piece it together with you and they have buy-in into it and understanding the solution and they trust you and you connect with them somehow, that's going to go a longer way as far as your negotiations dealing with foreigners.
Thanks, everybody. We have, does anybody have one last burning question? We're also making an appearance at the pub tonight. If anybody thinks of any questions later, wants to come join us for a drink. John Bevel.
Oh, there's a question.
Sure. I don't know if it's on.
So looking at the size of...
They can't hear you.
It's...
We'll just speak loud, then we can hear you.
Speak loud. We can kind of hear you.
Speaking of batteries. Testing.
Speak up, John. We know you can.
I'll repeat it if you want to.
So looking at Arizona State University and Thunderbird, what are ways that universities can get involved in offsets for the benefit of our students?
How can ASU get involved in offsets? Jesse, I'm going to pick you.
The best way is getting involved in the conferences that are out there. So the LOA is one of them. That's a good way because there's training and all the prime contractors and those that have obligations and offset, they're attending. So connecting with them and understanding what are the things they're going through. And you can now start also understanding what are some of the issues that they're trying to satisfy in this country. And you, by listening, you know your university the most, and you can start making connections and go, you know what, if they're really looking into energy, Middle East is struggling, renewable energy, that's something that we have. We have solar, we have wave energy. Maybe I can get them in touch with, you know, the faculty and so forth, and start bringing those discussions. I really don't think when any offset idea is a bad idea. You know, you have to look at everything and explore, and some of them may not go through, but some of them do. And I think by you going to these conferences and listening to that, you can make those connections for sure.
Or
Yeah.
working with an offset service provider.
That
Thought
is
I'd throw
right.
that out there.
Little plug.
Yes. But
One day. Yes. All right, so I'm going to hand it back to Stephanie to wrap things up.
well, there is one more thing. You know, the conference, if you can't make the conference here in Phoenix in March, right?
Yes. So the Phoenix one's in March.
I thought you were going to talk
Yeah.
about that.
So in April, the Global Offset and Countertrade Association is having a conference in Paris, France. So if you guys want to come, just come on.
Is that a free one? Free for Thunderbird students, right?
Yeah, we may put you to work, but
Yeah, if I hear anything about that, I'll let you guys know for sure. So. Just want to say thank you so much, Julie, Andrew, Jesse, Michael, for coming. And I think the intent was to open a dialogue about a career that's uniquely T-Bird, and think about different career paths that maybe you haven't considered before. So thank you again for doing that, and applause. Yeah.